All right, guys, welcome back to another Buckmasters Outdoor Podcast. We've got Corey Courtwright from Alabama Extension, and we're going to talk a little bit about something outside of deer hunting today, a little bit about bow fishing. So a lot of questions that we get, and me personally, I do bow fishing during the summer, during the off season, and we get a lot of questions about bow fishing, laws and regs on it, how do you do it, different species to shoot, where can I go? So there's a lot of questions that we're going to try to answer today. Short and sweet podcast we just want to cover. So, Mr. Corey, thank you for getting on. And can you just tell everybody what's your title there, Extension?
Yeah, I'm the Aquatic Resource Extension Agent for Central Alabama.
Okay. So you're the fish guy, is what we can.
Yeah.
You're the fish guy. Okay.
Questions about managing your pond or anything that comes up, fish or water, come through me for a big part of the state.
Good deal. So there's definitely some questions that I don't know. I know, some non-native species. I know some native, and I know the common laws and regs on it. But then also there's some questions that I want to answer personally. And then I know, we kind of talked briefly before this, and you'd mentioned that you are intrigued with bow fishing. You know some things about bow fishing, but hopefully I can kind of answer some questions that you might have for bow fishing. So kind of the first thing that I want to know, if you don't mind, tell us about and tell the audience about native and non-native species, because that's a big question that we get. So what are our native species that you can bow fish here in the, I guess let's just keep it generic too, and let's not keep it Alabama waters, but let's keep it the southeastern waterways. What are the native species and what are the non-native species?
Okay, the big native species that a lot of people might go after with the bow would be any of the suckers, the buffalo fish, and gar. And actually, depending on the state, there are different regulations on the alligator gar, especially where you might be able to bow fish them or not. And the non-natives, you're talking common carp and the Asian carp. Oh, also one of the natives also that you might go after are freshwater drum.
Okay. And from my understanding, there are all kinds of different carp. And again, we had kind of talked about this too. It's like some of them have more scales on their spine. Some of them are different colors. Some of them are different lengths and sizes. And but your common grass carp is kind of what I normally. That's when I go bow fishing. That's kind of the number one carp that I'm taking. But that's a native species, correct?
The grass carp, no, they're not. They're
really
from China and Asia. They're part of a group of carp known as the Asian carp that include grass carp, silver carp, black carp, and bighead carp, and they're all invasive. And then the other carp that you see a lot is the common carp, and it's out of more Europe and some in Asia. It's also an invasive species. It's been here since the 1800s, so it's well worked into our waterways now, but it is technically an invasive species, the common carp as well. So, and it's from a different group of carp. It's not the same group as the grass carp and the silver carp. You can see even in the shape of the fish that they're shaped differently between that common carp and the grass carp, but all of those are non-native invasive species.
Okay. So the carp that jumps, that's your Asian carp, correct?
It is, and the silver carp are the ones that are really famous for that. The others will do it some as well, but yeah, the silver carp are really famous for jumping when a boat comes through on the river, and they can actually be dangerous.
Oh yeah.
You have a 20-pound missile flying through the air as you're shooting through on your boat doing 50.
Which
and
that is
hard.
And that can be, I've seen people do it. The Coosa River here, if you're an Alabama native, that the Coosa River, they don't, from my understanding, I've never seen them in there, but the Asian carp are not in there. However, the river system that I go to in North Alabama, Tennessee River, they are definitely in there. Lord, I see them all the time. But I do see people who bow fish them in their own way of instead of shooting through the water, you're shooting them when they jump out of the air. I've never done that. I would imagine that'd be tricky, but that's interesting. So, and then again, the gar is another big question. People think, oh, that's a gar, and I've got a gar, and that's going to be a 400-pound fish once it gets bigger. No, the river systems here that I have found, and again, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Coosa River, some of the Alabama River does have alligator gar, but the Coosa River, for the most part, have your spotted gar. Is that the common term for them?
Yeah, there are several different species of gar, and yeah, the alligator gar aren't nearly as common to see as the spotted gar or the long-nosed gar. They're the more common that we see in most of the rivers and really most of the eastern part of the country.
Right. And what's the size that they normally get?
The long nose, they can get pretty good size. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure on a maximum. They can get up 5-6 feet even at times. Probably the biggest I've ever seen was probably about a 5-footer.
Wow.
So they can get to a pretty decent size. They're not going to have the girth of the alligator gar. So
Right.
they're not going to be that 100-pounder. But they can get pretty decent size.
I know the alligator gar, that's kind of the fish that is in a lot of the waterways where I grew up in Mississippi, and the Mississippi River had them big time. And then if you go on over into Louisiana and into Texas and Oklahoma, I know they have a lot of alligator gar. And those would be, I don't know how in the heck you would even wrangle one of those in if you were to get an era in one, because they are very powerful. Those are some big fish. And then also you've got to watch out for the teeth. So on any of them, the spotted gar and the alligator gar. So if y'all are trying to take that, that's definitely something you need to look out for. But so that's interesting. Alligator gar, are they non-native or are they native species?
They're native, and they're actually an important part of the food chain. So the fisheries managers watch them pretty close when in the area that does have a population of them, because they're obviously a top predator, so they're an important part of the food chain, and they're easy to overfish because they can't start reproducing until they're pretty old.
Wow.
So a lot of fish will reproduce when they're 2-3 years old. An alligator gar, you're probably talking on a female, you might be talking 10 or 11 years before she starts reproducing.
That's interesting.
So that's something that the fisheries managers watch, because it's easier to overharvest them than it is some other fish because of that.
Yeah, I did not know that. I thought they were actually a non-native species. So answering some questions that I did not know for sure. Okay, so that's interesting. And then I guess getting into different types of waterways, like my biggest questions is, why are they in them? Like, why do we have non-natives? I know you said something about 1800s, the carp was introduced. Like, do you know that answer? Like, where do they come from? Did somebody just have them in their fish tank and let them out? I mean, really, how did they get there?
There's all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it is stuff like just had them in the fish tank. With the common carp, I think it was actually they were brought in for a food and a sport fish. In Europe, there's carp fishing tournaments. Actually, they're starting to be more popular here with the common carp, because they're great fighting fish. And believe it or not, unlike what most people say about them, they're not a bad eating fish if you prepare them right. And the things like the silver carp, they were actually brought in for a couple different purposes back in the 1970s, 1980s. They were brought in for aquaculture, to eat the algae in aquaculture ponds, but also in water treatment ponds. They were brought in to clean up the water, because they're filter feeders, so they filter out the algae, but they got loose from those ponds and are causing a major disaster especially the Mississippi River drainage.
It's crazy how it makes you wonder what the heck was people thinking, in all seriousness, because it's like with that kudzu, privet, all your other stuff that's non-native, it's like, why was this introduced? But at the time, it seemed like the best practice. And I mean, I can't argue with that, but now looking back on it, you're like, what were you thinking? It's kind of like the same thing. I wonder, why did God make bees? Why did he make snakes that hurt you? Why does he make things like that? But there's a purpose, there's a reason for it. But anyway, so that's interesting. I guess, what is the top non-native species that is doing the most damage in our waterways right now? What's the one that we need to get out the most right now that's taking over?
Probably most people would say either the silver carp or the big head carp. They just really are taking over. And like you said, some of the areas you fish, you're starting to see them now in Alabama. They had only been in that Mississippi River drainage, but they're working their way into other places, and they can reproduce so fast. The silver carp, a big silver carp, she'll keep spawning all summer long, and one fish can potentially produce over 5 million eggs. And
Wow.
once they get into a waterway that is suitable to spawn, they just go crazy. And so and the reason they're an issue is because since they are filter feeders, they filter out all the algae and the zooplankton, the the fish that should be the prey fish in those rivers need to eat. Our brim and other small minnows and things like that are the basis for the food chain for the bass and the catfish and the things like that we all love to go out fishing for.
Mm-hmm.
These silver carp are sucking up all the food that the little brim and the little minnows and everything else that is the basis for the food chain need.
That's interesting. Wow. I don't know. I love learning about this stuff because anything outdoors is cool to me. But stuff that's just we need to be protecting and taking care of in our waterways is important for all of us to know. But I guess a lot of people wonder, how can I get these things out? How can I help manage? And again, you can get your rod and reel. You can go out. You can catch them. There's different ways. You can spear them. You can do different things and different laws and regs for your state. Just make sure wherever you're at, because each state varies in different things of how you can take these fish, but make sure you look at that. But the main thing that we're talking about today is bow fishing, because it is a sport that has really taken over. And I guess I'll let you just kind of, Corey, if you got any questions about it, because again, I'm no pro in any way in this. I just do it on the weekends during the summer, and I love it to death. But is there any questions that you've got, Mr. Corey, about bow fishing and kind of how you get started and everything that goes in with it?
Yeah, I've been fascinated by it for a while, and it'd be fun to get into. My whole life I've been a gigger. I love fish gigging, and bow fishing seems to kind of be along those same lines. But I've never known what kind of bow I need or how to get it set up, what kind of reel rig it needs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you could walk me through some of that,
So,
I'd love to.
and that's the biggest question. Like, especially everybody, they get like, oh my Lord, they get nervous about it, scared. It's like intimidated, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, about how to start and where to start. With today's world, guys, I mean, you can YouTube anything. You can find out how to do anything. And that's kind of how I started, was just, how do I get a setup? And again, I was thinking in my mind, I've got to go spend $400 or $500 on a bow that is set up for this, and I've got to get a reel, and I've got to get my arrows and all this, but that's not the case in any way. I actually started off, I went to a pawn shop. Actually, I'm from Troy. I went to a pawn shop and bought a $50 Old Bear bow. You turn the poundage down, you go to Academy, you go to Bass Pro, you can go to Dick's, you can go just about anywhere that has outdoor goods, and you can buy the reel setup that comes with this. And just attach it to the bow. I mean, then that's how I got started. And you're talking about $150. You can get started on the bare bone minimum. For a nicer deal, you're talking about a couple $100, $300. You can get started and get what you need. But that is a big question that a lot of people ask me, and I see this, asked, is how do I get that? But that's step one. Again, understanding your equipment and the respecting it and understanding how it works and everything is always important. So practice, make sure that you're out there, shooting your arrow, shooting your bow, making sure your equipment's tuned up and ready. Also, just so you can make a good ethical shot on the fish too, is important. But kind of also another technique that I've learned, Corey, is for practice, you might laugh at this, but I fill up a milk jug with water. You can put dye in it, red dye, blue dye, whatever you want. And actually the jug sometimes it'll float, but over time it will somewhat sink. It'll kind of just sink to the point to where you need it. And obviously you don't do this in an 8-foot deep of water, but do it in where you can see it at the bottom. And then that's how I got started for practicing and figuring out how to shoot. That Coke can you can throw right there and then just, shoot it. You can do it in your pool. You can do it wherever you need be. But that's how I got started and learned how shot placement, because shot placement, I will say, is the biggest thing about bow fishing. Is you would think, because you're not shooting like through a sight. You're not shooting through your peep sight. It's like an old traditional recurve. It's just you're shooting out a feel. So you're just aiming with your eye, but not with looking down the air or anything. And then so whenever you shoot, you're wanting to aim low because you might be able to tell me about what this is, Corey, but it's some scientific fact, I guess. But you've got to aim low because your arrow, the stuff that's in the water, you have to aim low so you can hit it. So to shoot underneath it is what you're trying to do, but you're actually hitting it dead on wherever you need to shoot. But it's so hard to explain. You just got to do it and shoot. And it takes shot after shot after shot to get it right. But that's another big question. But that's what I've learned.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be something I was going to ask you about, was how do you address that? Because the water bends the light as it goes in, and so it makes it look like the fish is in a slightly different place than it really is. And so
yeah, so you said that better. Bends the light. I'm just a redneck who shoots the bow and tries to hit something, and I don't know what it's called, but it's definitely, if y'all ever have thrown anything into the pool and it's like, man, I know it's right there, but it kind of looks like two of them, or it's lower than it is. That's what it is. It's bending the light, or however you say, Corey, because it really messes it up, though. It'll mess up your shot. And these arrows that you're shooting are not like your regular just, Easton arrow, threaded, carbon bonded arrow. I mean, these are like fiberglass, heavy arrows that you're shooting. So that makes it a little bit more challenging too. It's not like you're shooting a lightweight arrow that's just slipping through the water. So you've got to have it down and figure out that technique of it. But definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to get into it, and some of what you were talking about earlier with the silver carp jumping. I think that'd be a great adventure. Be out on a boat and trying to shoot them in the air.
One guy that I've seen
have steady nerves.
I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast has probably seen too. Have you ever seen the Slock Master, Tim Wells?
I have.
He is like, if y'all don't know, obviously y'all Google. Y'all have got to have seen him. If you've seen any sort of bow fishing, he is like known for spearing stuff. He's out in Africa spearing a buffalo and hippos and alligators and all kinds of stuff. But he was I would say his start to fame in the outdoor industry was him having some just insane shots. And some of those insane shots were him on a boat. I think he's in Midwest or something. It could have been like the Ohio River or something, but him making these crazy shots of these Asian carp jumping over the boat and him shooting them at like 15 feet out. And he's really cool. All right. Hey, I want to take a quick break right there. I want to talk about Timney triggers. So since 1946, Timney Triggers has been providing hunters with unmatched accuracy through the world's finest triggers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but whether you're hunting big game, small critters, or something in between, Timney, I promise they have something made for you for whatever you're in target. Each trigger is proudly made in the USA, that's my favorite, and protected under a lifetime warranty. You can find your trigger today at timneytriggers.com. I'll put a link in the description. Please be sure to check them out. But Timney Triggers, made in the USA, doesn't get much better. Another thing that I like to do too, Corey, is and again, it's different. When you're getting into the salt water and brackish water, if you're down in the Gulf, you have different regs for different states. And again, please make sure wherever you're going, make sure you're doing it right. But one thing that we like to do, me and my wife, we go down and we do a lot of stingray. We bow fish for stingrays. And again, that's got a soft spot for some people. They're like, why shoot a stingray? They're sweet. They're not hurting anything. Why would you do that? However, I will say that's one of the ways that I have been able to kind of sharpen my shooting ability. And I'll say also, the likelihood of harming this fish to death to where you're going to, ultimately kill it is very, very slim. But it's a way that you can, and I'll explain that, but it's a way you can practice and shoot in clear, super clear brackish. It's brackish water, but it's super clear down there in the Gulf. And we'll take our bow lights and we'll ride around and you can see them, man, and they're swimming. And sometimes they'll swim, sometimes they'll sit low, but it's the best way to gain practice and your ability to accuracy to increase it. But what I mean by also, you're not harming the fish is there's actually, and you might know this, Corey, but there's like a size of a golf ball right between their eyes, right above them. And if as long as you're not hitting that, then you're good completely. You can shoot them in their side of their fins, of their, I guess, their tails, or whatever you want to call it. And it's just simply cartilage. They don't bleed hardly at all. It's kind of as if your ear is kind of that heavy, thick cartilage. So there's no harm to the fish whatsoever. And then the barb on the southerns, that's one thing you have to worry about whenever you're doing that. We've got a long fillet knife, like a 12-inch fillet knife, and we'll go against it and just cut the barb off to where that's not going to hurt you, because if you do get poked by the barb of those southerns, it's really, really painful. But that's something else that we like to do, and it's really, really fun. And then, again, there's not that many non-native species down there, in my opinion. I don't know, you might be able to speak on this, Corey, but I don't think there's some gar down there in the brackish, and I'm sure, obviously you said those are non-native, but there's a lot of sport fish that you can go down there and you can take down there. It's really fun. It can kind of help sharpen your ability, and it's a different look and feel than the river system.
When you're in the rivers, do you have more success by boat or on the bank or both, or how do you go about it?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is another question that we get. And a lot of people might be looking at this and watching this and think, man, I've got to have $30,000 just to do this, because I need a boat and I need a setup and no, it's nowhere near the case. You don't have to have the lights. You can do this day or night. This is not a day or night, just a night specific, sport. Actually, some of our best bow fishing that me and my wife have done is on the Coosa River during the daytime, during the spawning season of the gar. The amount of gar that come up in the edge of the banks is unbelievable. And the majority of this stuff you can reach by foot. There's public waters, there's some banks and stuff on Alabama, I know, that you can reach to it. But whenever these fish come up, that's when you're able to capitalize on this. And but yeah, it's definitely, if the water's clear, you have the clarity, daytime, and especially the way the glasses are now, you can have some glasses that's polarized and you can see straight through the bottom. That's kind of how we got started. It actually was through daytime, because we didn't have lights. But now we do have a light system on the front of our boat. We've got an 18-foot, just a regular old aluminum boat, knock around we just hit the river with. But we've got a system where a generator, runs the lights and it's projecting it through the water. And it's crazy what you can see at night with those lights. It is unbelievable. But yeah, that's kind of how we got started and how you can do it.
Well, that's cool. With the gar, do you cut the back straps out and eat them? They're good eating.
Oh man,
don't know that.
We've tried it, and it's actually, you are right, it's so good. And if you get, a lot of the times, like those bigger ones, you actually have to have like a sharp knife or hatchet, machete. You have to get through it. So like a layer of bone, but they have a back strap per se on each side of them. That's actually really good. You are right. I've cooked it in different ways. There's all kinds of different recipes you can do, but for sure, the kind of the fish though that I don't mess with is the carp, the drum. I don't get into that. But however, I know those species do need to be controlled. So we do go out and we take care of those. And again, it's fun. It's so fun to do. But we've got places we dump them. They make for great garden fertilizer. They make for good anything like that. You spread out through your yard, let it sit, and let that dirt break down. And it's actually, surprisingly, it's really, really good for your garden. That's what we do with ours. So.
Well, I really like drum. It's actually especially a smaller drum. When they get bigger, they get fatty.
Yeah.
A smaller drum from a clean river, people say they're more likely to pick up off flavors and stuff. But then even the common carp, I'll eat them. The bones are the issue for me in there. But I know of where people like grind it and then squirt it out a jerky gun and make fish sticks and do things like that. And then the bones aren't an issue. So there's lots of different things that can be done like that. But I love that you don't waste them. If you're putting them in, using them for fertilizer or something like that, getting some good out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I've never tried drum. I'd love to try it, but I don't know. I've always heard and said that they're bony fish. They've got a lot of bones. You got to like pick through them. It's hard to do. But kind of another question that I want to address, and I know a little bit about it for here in Alabama. And again, I don't know, you don't know every other state. And again, I'll defer to that. Check your local regs with your game and fish, because every state is so different. I mean, it is so different. Like if you go down to the brackish water down there in the Gulf, you can shoot, from my understanding, you can shoot redfish in Louisiana, but you can't in Alabama. It's highly illegal. But going back into, let's just keep it river systems here, your game fish and non-game fish. So from my understanding, non-game fish you can take with a bow. Game fish you can't. So what is a game fish? What is a non-game fish?
That does vary from state to state. Most states, your invasives are going to be non-game, so that there's not so much regulation on them. Your common carp, your silver carp, your big head, your grass carp, things like that are almost always, I shouldn't say that, but typically going to be non-game, so that there's not so much restrictions on harvest. Usually, as far as the natives, usually freshwater drum are non-game fish. Usually the suckers are buffalo fish, usually are considered non-game. One thing that's different for me, I grew up in Missouri, and their catfish are game fish. Here in Alabama, now that I've moved down here, they're non-game. Yeah. So that it's a different ball game of how we can go after catfish here than what I'm used to back home.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's crazy too with the lights, and even, I mean, if you get out there and you're on the rivers and you got that clear water during the day, you can see it too. But it is amazing what you can see when you turn the lights on that rig, and you can see the bass. You're like, I will fish all day, and I will try my hardest, and I'll catch a couple 2-3 pounders, and you're like, man, there's got to be some 8-10s in here. Man, when you turn those lights on and you realize just how many big fish are in the lake, it's crazy. Specifically, Lay Lake is where I go on the Coosa, and I did not know there was that many big fish. But when you go during spawning season of bass, I mean, you will just see chunks. I mean, just 8-10-pound bass just swimming around, just around their bed, working it. But man, it's eye-opening. It's like, how are there so many species of, or not species, but good quality fish, and so many species of fish? But you see all kinds of stuff. Turtles, alligator snapping turtles. I see soft shell turtles, all kinds of stuff. Snakes, water snakes, beavers, nutrient, all kinds of stuff that you're able to see when you're out there. So that's why we like doing it, and it's just intriguing to do. I will say also, as everybody knows, I mean, just respect it. If you are doing it, on a lot of these waterways and stuff, they have a lot of houses. The people reside there. They have a lot of houses there that's butts up to the water. So, just keep that in mind if you are doing this, and, you're out there at 10, 11 o'clock at night and you've got music blaring and a generator running a set of lights. Just keep that in mind, because, we want to keep a good rep for these bow fishers and what we do. But it's definitely a sport that is growing. It's definitely a sport that I'm so glad I was introduced to and started, because it passes a lot of our time that we spend on the water. So, but what kind of other questions you got, Corey? Does that answer everything for you?
I think it does. And I just want to encourage everybody to get out there, and especially on those non-native things like the silver carp, get out there and harvest them. And they're great eating too. There was a taste test done in southern Missouri where they put silver carp up against tilapia and catfish, and people preferred silver carp almost 2-to-1 over tilapia or catfish.
Wow.
And so get out there and get them, and try to keep them from taking over your state if they're not there yet.
Man, I'm sticking to my bass and catfish. I don't think I can, unless somebody prepares it. And I might be wrong. I've ate some stuff that I'm like, man, I don't want to do that. But then it surprises you. But that is awesome. But yeah, I hope this answers questions for people. I mean, this is coming straight from the fish guy. I mean, what else do you want? I mean, it's coming from the man, speaking from the mouth of the, how do you say that? What's the word? Speaking from the fish guy's mouth. So, yeah. But I hope that answers.
About me.
Yeah. I hope that answers all y'all's questions. And again, if y'all have more questions, drop it in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer. If I don't know, I'll look it up, and I'll reach back out to Corey. He can help me. But Corey, I love everything that y'all are doing over there. Y'all are partnering with us, and we appreciate that so much with the articles that y'all provide for our magazine. We provide some online articles, and anything that we need knowledge on, we reach out to them, and you guys always help, and we can't thank y'all enough for that. And I hope this podcast was informational, had some info on it, and helped you guys. And I learned some stuff from Corey, so I hope he learned some stuff from me. But
I did.
Well, good deal. Well, if y'all have any other questions, again, drop it in the comments. Let us know. Thank you, Corey, for your time. And that concludes it for today's podcast. I appreciate it.